On this Sunday night, ominous appointment. Russia's new man in charge of the invasion of Ukraine.
He has a reputation for unrelenting brutality.
Chilling signals of the showdown to come. Also tonight, cruising makes a comeback. Canada welcomes its first ship since COVID grounded the industry. Plus, passports delayed.
The passport office is pretty much getting your passport a day before you leave.
A surge in demand driving a backlog and putting travelers on edge. And when news gets personal.
I literally feel like I'm paying a piece of my soul every time I tell a story.
The award-winning journalist covering stories that hit close to home.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Sophie Louis.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. The threat to Kyiv is receding, but fear is rising in eastern Ukraine as Russia builds up its forces in the region. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the country is bracing itself for a hard battle that experts warn could start in a matter of days. There are ominous signs Russian attacks in many parts of Ukraine are escalating, and the Kremlin has appointed a new commander to lead the invasion. Ross Lord has our top story tonight.
With Russian attacks in eastern Ukraine escalating, streams of mostly women and children continue their desperate journey to safety over the Polish border. Some barely survive the shelling at the Kramatorsk train station that killed dozens. As they stagger through their living nightmare, Russia's barbaric attacks will be directed by a new general, Alexander Dvornikov, notorious for ordering atrocities in Chechnya and Syria.
It seems this is one of the last best hopes that Vladimir Putin has, and we should not underestimate the resources that are still at the disposal of the Russian military.
Ukraine's ambassador to the United Kingdom says the new Russian offensive is likely aimed at having something for Vladimir Putin to boast about in time for May 9th, an anniversary known in Russia as Victory Day.
What we constantly reminding our people that we should do anything but just never turn into animals. The Russians already are.
As machines work to clean up after the slaughter of civilians in the city of Bucha, there are more ominous signs, like this Russian convoy estimated at 13 kilometers long in eastern Ukraine's Kharkiv region. In his continual pursuit of more support from NATO countries, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky claims Russia is targeting not only his country but all of Europe.
Не вагався жодної хвилини, чи підтримувати Україну.
Even civilians returning to Kyiv after Russian soldiers retreated are not sure where they stand.
I came to Kyiv to pick up a few of my things and go away again, because we have some awkward situation with Russian troops, I think, and we don't know still it's safe to be in Kyiv or not.
As calls intensify for European countries to end all purchases of Russian oil and gas, there's another effort at diplomacy, this one by Austrian Chancellor Karl Nehammer. He's met with Zelensky and meets next with Putin. Nehammer says he wants to build bridges and stop what he calls the war of aggression, as the world watches and wonders what it will take to make it stop. Ross Lord, Global News.
Well, many around the world have condemned the ruthless attacks on Ukrainian civilians, calling them war crimes. A warning, our coverage includes some disturbing images. Tonight, the U.S. says the wheels are in motion to build a case against Russian President Vladimir Putin. As Jennifer Johnson reports, top prosecutors from the International Criminal Court are pursuing thousands of cases.
The brutal attacks against Ukrainian citizens have horrified the world. The Biden administration says it is working with its allies to put Russian President Vladimir Putin on trial. Ukraine has set up an online archive to document the atrocities.
These are war crimes. These are shocking and brutal acts that are completely unacceptable. And the United States will work with the international community to make sure there's accountability.
Cell phones are recording the brutality that has gone beyond the usual boundaries of war. Attacks on civilian targets, allegations of rape, torture, and extreme deprivation all can constitute war crimes or crimes against humanity. Captured Russian soldiers are reportedly saying they were told to bomb civilian areas, even handing over maps.
We
filed all the criminal charges in the international court. We have the criminal cases opened in Ukraine, more than 4,000 of individual criminal cases already by the prosecutor general. We have 10 more countries that opened their own individual criminal prosecutions, and we're providing all the evidence to them.
Along with Putin, Ukraine officials are vowing to prosecute soldiers and military commanders, both on the ground and in Russia. International war crimes investigators are in Ukraine, risking their own lives to defend those whose lives were savagely taken. Experts warn evidence gathering is a slow task.
People should be prepared for some time and the complexity of the process, that this is not going to be immediate and this is not going to be easy.
No sitting head of state has ever been tried for war crimes. Finding and arresting a heavily protected Vladimir Putin won't be easy, but in-person prosecution is required by international law.
Vladimir Putin needs to be charged and go to justice or die with an indictment hanging over his head.
Russia has repeatedly denied it has committed any war crimes, but the evidence has been overwhelming and broadcast all over the world. Images that have haunted millions and galvanized leaders from the U.S., Canada, and their allies to make Putin pay. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
French President Emmanuel Macron is set to face far-right candidate Marine Le Pen in a runoff following the first round of France's presidential election. Macron is projected to win round one with around 28% of the vote, but Le Pen is not far behind at 23%. The two front-runners set to face each other again April 24th, when voters will decide if Macron will stay in power for 5 more years. Macron was the runaway favorite for most of the campaign, thanks in part to his active diplomacy with Ukraine and France's strong economic recovery. But Le Pen, who's running on an anti-immigration platform, made significant gains in the last few days after shifting her focus to cost of living issues. Now to the pandemic. Shanghai's 26 million residents are still under a harsh lockdown prompted by a surge in infections. But the zero COVID strategy has spurred a barrage of complaints about food shortages. On Chinese social media, many stuck in their homes say food and other essential goods are running out, with supermarkets shut down and delivery services strained. The city has been delivering some supplies to homes and says it is trying to secure more goods. The lockdown had been scheduled to end last week, but it has been extended indefinitely. After a 2-year lockdown in the cruise industry, the first ship has sailed back into Canadian waters this weekend. Cruise ships saw some of the most dire outbreaks early on in the pandemic, resulting in crushing measures to the sector. There are high hopes now as the season officially begins, but as Catherine Urquhart reports, COVID could complicate the comeback.
It was a welcome sight for the beleaguered Canadian cruise industry. Holland America's Koningsdam cruised under the Lionsgate Bridge and into the port of Vancouver early Sunday, the first cruise ship to arrive in Canada's largest port since the pandemic started more than 2 years ago.
It's vitally important, and I just want to acknowledge how hard everyone has worked to make today possible.
About 1,200 passengers and 900 crew were on board. In total, 310 cruise ships are expected to arrive in Vancouver in 2022.
With cruise ships making their way to Vancouver and other ports across Canada, this season is an exciting time for our travel and tourism sectors.
In Halifax, the industry resumes April 26th, with a total of 152 vessels due to dock in the Port of Halifax this year. Nationwide, cruising generates billions of dollars and provides thousands of jobs.
Cruising in Canada is an important part of our tourism economy, and prior to the pandemic accounted for 30,000 jobs and contributed more than $4 billion to the Canadian economy annually.
Canada lifted its pandemic-related ban on cruise ships November 1st, with conditions. Everyone on board must be fully vaccinated, and passengers must test negative before boarding. The Koningsdam had no confirmed COVID cases before arriving in Canada.
We've been working closely with Transport Canada and other global health experts, as well as officials from this city and port, to make sure we're able to deliver the cruise experience our guests are looking forward to, and one that is safe.
Early in the pandemic, at least 40 cruise ships suffered outbreaks before the industry ground to a halt. Among the worst, the Diamond Princess. More than 700 of the 3,700 passengers and crew on board became infected while quarantined in Yokohama, Japan. 14 deaths were connected to the outbreak. Return of the cruise industry in Canada comes as some experts warn of a sixth wave of the pandemic. Clearly, many passengers believe their love of cruising outweighs any risks. Catherine Urquhart, Global News, Vancouver.
Well, by water, land, or air, many Canadians are itching to travel now that restrictions have eased. And that means dusting off the old passport. Turns out, after leaving them in a drawer for more than 2 years, many travelers are discovering their passports have expired. As Sarah Reed reports, that's leading to nerve-wracking delays for those in a rush to renew.
When going to Service Canada, everyone expects to wait.
Sometimes it's a couple of hours, but you can sit there and plan your morning to do that.
That's the way it used to be. This is what people face now. Long lines just to make an application and then long waits for a passport to arrive.
It says online 20 business days, plus or minus. And so that would actually take us a little bit into the beginning of May. So I'm hoping it's on the minus side.
That's because Taylor Heinzelmeyer is planning to travel to the U.S. next month. With so many people trying to renew their documents, the wait time is actually on the plus side, with most people receiving their new passports months after applying.
So we're also seeing people that have already mailed their passports in to get renewed, paid the renewal fee, head over to Canada Place and actually do another appointment and pay another fee and pay an express fee just to get their passports in time.
According to Service Canada, the delays are being caused by increased demand. From April 2020 to March 2021, it issued 363,000 passports. But from April of last year to March this year, that number jumped to 1.2 million.
We're trying to plan ahead and get things done, and you know, we're busy, and so it's a little bit disheartening and just really frustrating and difficult.
So while vacations are supposed to be relaxing,
if you have a trip booked and it's within the 2 weeks, the passport office is pretty much getting your passport a day before you leave.
Meaning your dream vacation quickly can become a travel nightmare. Sarah Reed, Global News.
Loblaw and PepsiCo have resolved a pricing dispute that kept several popular snacks off store shelves for more than a month. The Canadian grocery giant confirming with Global News both sides have reached an agreement, with products starting to be shipped out tomorrow. Frito-Lay products such as Cheetos, Doritos, Lay's and Ruffles were kept out of Loblaw's stores since late February. The company expects stores to be fully stocked before Easter weekend. Coming up, the thin blue line. Calgary police at an impasse over a controversial patch. And later, the miniature library that'll have you reaching for a magnifying glass. A disturbing discovery in Spain. Police have seized one of Europe's largest collections of taxidermy animals. From elephants to polar bears, more than 1,000 stuffed specimens were found inside 2 warehouses. Among them, endangered species like the Bengal tiger, along with some now extinct animals. The collection's owner is now being investigated for potential smuggling. A controversial patch is pitching Calgary police against its Citizens Oversight Committee. Last week, the Calgary Police Commission ordered officers to stop wearing thin blue line patches. But so far, many members are refusing to comply. Heather Urquhart explains why.
It's a symbol stoking division in Calgary.
It's concerning that Calgary police officers consider it acceptable to ignore a lawful direction they personally disagree with.
On March 30th, Calgary's Police Commission directed the service to remove the thin blue line patches from all police uniforms, citing the symbol's mixed meaning. For some, it's a way of acknowledging police and honoring fallen officers. But thin blue line imagery has also come to be associated with racism and white supremacy after prominent displays of the symbol at Black Lives Matter counter-protests.
We made it very clear that to racialized communities, Black and Indigenous Calgarians, the symbol is directly offensive and in exact contradiction to the idea that Black people's lives have value.
Calgary is far from the first jurisdiction to ban officers from wearing the patch. Edmonton, Ottawa, Toronto, and nationally the RCMP have all done the same. But with the support of their union, many Calgary police officers are refusing to comply.
Removing patches from the uniforms is one thing, but completely vilifying the symbol and its meaning to our people, which has been communicated, is very much another.
Calgary's police chief says the directive will be enforced, but not for 2 weeks, adding that the issue illuminates a growing distrust between officers and members of the police commission.
Our members are paying very close attention to the social media accounts of individual councillors, and the quantity of anti-police content that's being sort of posted, shared, or liked is really causing concern to the members.
There's going to have to be serious discussion, perhaps the sheer number of officers who are defying this. It's going to be incredibly challenging.
The Calgary Police Commission is standing by its directive, maintaining that sooner or later all police service members will have to comply. Heather Urquhart, West Global News, Calgary.
Ahead on Global National, beyond the headlines, journalism with a very personal connection. Another first since the pandemic began, worshippers from around the world traveling to Jerusalem for Palm Sunday. Parishioners lined the streets for a procession before prayers echoed in the church during Mass. Palm Sunday marks the start of the Holy Week for Christians. Well, the recent meetings in Rome between Pope Francis and Indigenous delegations from Canada attracted dozens of journalists to report on the historic event. But for one correspondent from the Aboriginal People's Television Network, covering the visit hit very close to home. Neetu Garcha reports.
Do you feel you're speaking on behalf of the 215 little voices that can no longer speak for themselves?
APTN journalist Tina House interviewing Tecumloops Tishwetmik Cookpee Roseanne Casimir in Rome.
This represents the little moccasins here, the 215 unmarked graves that were found in Kamloops.
She traveled with the delegation to cover reconciliation meetings with Pope Francis with her own piercing perspective.
Everyone here has been affected by residential schools one way or another.
Including her. Tina's grandmother was forced into a residential school. Her mother went to a boarding school.
In my career as a journalist now, I've literally probably interviewed hundreds of survivors. And it has affected me in a way that I literally feel like I'm paying a piece of my soul every time I tell a story.
Tina's now 15-year career got underway with a gruesome case. She intimately told the detailed story of her missing cousin, only revealing at the end it was her relative, in a half-hour special on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, which won an Amnesty International Human Rights Award in 2010. All that work culminating in a watershed moment earlier this month.
This is the very first time that our voices are being heard, the Métis. We have been so disenfranchised our whole lives because of our mixed race.
A proud moment for her people, more than 2 decades after her late father, hailed a national Métis hero, won this Aboriginal Achievement Award in 2001. And Tina adding to the House family hardware not long after her return to Canada.
Tina. One day to rest and boom, hit the ground, and now I win National Reporter for the Canadian Screen Awards. Dad, if you're here now, thank you. I miss you and I love you. Thank you.
As the first Indigenous journalist to win that award, she's making history while also covering it. Neetu Garcha, Global News.
Next, reading the fine print, the big donation of hundreds of very small books. Well, as the saying goes, don't judge a book by its cover, even if it's a teeny tiny cover. A couple of rare book collections are catching the eye of officials at the Jewish Library in Montreal. But as Phil Carpenter explains, in order to truly appreciate these volumes, you'll need a magnifying glass.
Oh my goodness, it's even looking. These are probably among the smallest books that have ever existed.
Oh my gosh, there's a million reasons why they're so special.
This is just one in a collection of miniature books that are about to go on display at the Jewish Public Library in Montreal. The volumes were donated by Lily Toth, who arranged to have them given to the library upon her death. There are more than 1,000.
I was blown away by them. I'd never seen anything. I've seen miniature books like one here, one there, but to see an entire room.
Toth, a Holocaust survivor, passed away a year ago at 96.
She made her way to Montreal in 1956 after the Hungarian Revolution.
Historian Dr. Kristen Howard notes that this collection is remarkable.
There are Bibles and books with Bible verses that are several hundred years old. There are a lot of more recent books, which collectors call mass market minis.
There are books of poetry, fine literature, children's literature, cookbooks. There's even an English-Yiddish dictionary from around the early 1900s.
You could put in your pocket if you're walking around and you can't remember the English word, you can't remember the Yiddish word.
There's also a collection of works of Shakespeare. Perhaps the smallest, this ultra-micro-miniature book of the Lord's Prayer, written in 7 languages, measuring less than 5 millimeters. Howard says that nowadays people buy miniature books for artistic reasons and collectors are rare, which is why they were surprised to learn of another collector, Lily's friend Daisy Gross, also a Holocaust survivor.
I love books, I read a lot, and I enjoy reading. It takes me to different world each time you read.
She owns 1,300 miniature books. She doesn't know what will happen to her collection when she passes.
That's not my problem. It's up to my children.
Gross hasn't ruled out donating them to the library, something officials there would no doubt be grateful for. Phil Carpenter, Global News, Montreal.
And that is Global National for this Sunday night. I'm Sophie Louie. Tonight, your Canada is the Aurora Borealis lighting up the sky over Iqaluit, Nunavut. We would love to see your corner of the country, so please keep sending your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. Donna Friesen will be back at the anchor desk tomorrow. Have a great night.